Hey, this is Nikki with One Life Students, and this is our series, Beyond the Red Letters. So all of us have a plethora of knowledge bouncing around in our brains. I think about the amount of headspace that song lyrics takes up for me in my head. Like, I could not hear a song for 10 years and it comes on and I still know every single lyric. Or like my son, for example, I have watched him compete in quick recall since elementary school, and I'm always amazed at the amount of random information that these students can contain in their brains, like capitals of obscure states that aren't even in the United States, or atomic numbers of different elements on the periodic table. All of these things that I think, when are they ever going to use this? But they have that knowledge in their head. All of us have those things. If you think about it, there's probably something that you know more about than anything else in the world. Think about how you learned that information. How did you get that knowledge in your head? Well, Jesus was that way with the Old Testament, with the scriptures at his time, during his time on earth. He knew the scriptures that everyone was familiar with, and he was able to quote them and teach from them very often. Today we're picking up in the book of Luke as two of Jesus' disciples are walking along and they're having a discussion just a few days after Jesus has been crucified. So this is where we walk into their story. In Luke chapter 24, starting in verse 13, it says, "Now on that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all these things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them. But their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, 'What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?' They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, answered him, 'Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know the things that have taken place there in these days?' He asked them, 'What things?' They replied, 'The things about Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped that he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since these things took place. Moreover, some women of our group astounded us. They were at the tomb earlier this morning, and when they did not find his body there, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the woman had said, but they did not see him. Then he said to them, 'Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets have declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah should suffer these things and then enter into his glory?' Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted to them the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he was going on. But they urged him strongly, saying, 'Stay with us, because it is almost evening, and the day is now nearly over.' So he went in to stay with them. When he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight." So these two men are walking along, and they're talking about the things that have happened to Jesus. And as Jesus approaches them, he notices, by the way that their body language is described, that they are very discouraged as well. And so he asks them what's going on, and they tell him that they had really hoped that this Jesus of Nazareth was going to be the Messiah that was going to free Israel. And Jesus, instead of just outright telling them. He goes to Scripture and he starts walking them through, from Moses through all the prophets, all of the things that Scripture has said about the Messiah and what he was going to have to endure. Jesus here is trying to encourage their faith by using the Scriptures that he knows so well and that they should also know so well, because that's where their faith is rooted, is in those Scriptures and what they know to be true. Here in just a minute, you're going to have some questions on your screen so that you can dive deeper into this scripture and some more scripture in the Gospel of Luke and start to get some of that information for yourselves. So when Jesus approached the disciples on the road, he could have so easily just shown them who he was, and they would have immediately believed that he had been resurrected. They would have known that what the women said was true. But he doesn't do that, and I think it's so interesting and shows so much, not only about Jesus' knowledge of Scripture, but his love of Scripture, that instead he takes the time to teach them through Scripture and show them things that maybe they have missed. He not only understands what knowledge of Scripture can do for your faith, but what it can do for your relationship with him. And so he guides them through that. And that is why we should value this knowledge of Scripture and how it can grow our relationship with God as well. We're going to give you some questions that are going to help you walk through your week, applying Scripture and the knowledge of it to your daily lives. Thank you so much for joining us again on this series. And as always, keep seeking and keep searching.